guys, and welcome to Strawberry Ink. Today I will be discussing a double homicide that happened in the country of Venezuela. On January 24th, 1976, a girl of Lebanese descent was born in Caracas, Venezuela. She lived with her father, Cibell Naime, who was a doctor at a hospital called Clínica Santa Sofia, and mother Salam Yordi, who was a stay-home mom. She was Cibell Naime, the youngest of three children. Cibell had strict parents who would not let her have a boyfriend until she graduated college, do sleepovers, leave the house without permission, and she would be physically disciplined if necessary. When Cibell was in high school, she was stubborn and would leave the house without permission anyways. Her father would be angry at her, and it was her mother's role to calm him down. At 18 years old, Cibell asked her parents for a pet cat. She claimed that she was at home a lot and often felt lonely. However, her father did not want to go get her one. By the end of November 1994, Cibell was reading her local newspaper and realized an article discussing an upcoming pet sale. Cibell called the phone number in the newspaper and informed the salespeople that she wanted to buy a Turkish Angora kitten from them. The salesperson, 30-year-old Miguel Tawil, was a lawyer but would also breed and sell pets as a side hustle. On the phone call with Cibell, Miguel offered to sell her the cat for 20,000 bolivares, which is about $562 in America. Cibell agreed to the deal and promised to buy the cat. She did not have the money to buy it, so she went to her father's office and grabbed one of his checks. She faked her father's signature and signed them. Cibell had practiced writing the signature many times. On the afternoon of December 6, 1994, the salesperson, Miguel Tawil, drove to Cibell's school, Minerva de Prado Celeste, and met with her. Miguel delivered her cat, that she intended in purchasing, which was white and 5 months old. She loved her new kitten and chose to call it Jasmine. Cibell then gave Miguel the false check she had taken from her father's office and took the kitten home. When Cibell got home, she told her parents that her friend had given her the pet cat. Her father let her keep it, despite having doubts of where she got the kitten from. Days later, Cibell's father, Shauki, noticed that one of his checks was missing from the office. He looked everywhere for it, and even went to the bank to see if it had been deposited by accident. Shauki then got the family together for a conversation and asked them who took the check from his office. The whole family denied having any involvement with the check. Shauki informed his three daughters that if he found out that any of them grabbed the check from his office, they would have a severe punishment. Cibell then got anxious. She was worried of finding out that she was the one who took the check. She then called Miguel, who had sold her the kitten, and begged to please give her the check back. However, Miguel explained to her that the purchase had already been made and he could not return the check to her because he had already deposited it into his bank account. Cibell continued calling Miguel, explaining to him that if he went back to the bank and retrieved the check, she would pay him with cash instead. Miguel still denied doing her that favor and started getting annoyed at her. 1 week later, Cibell called again, talking in a different voice to pretend to be someone else, and claimed that her name was Adriana. She told Miguel that she was interested in two poodle dogs that she had seen on one of his flyers in the area. Miguel did not notice that the person calling was Cibell, so he fell for the hoax and listened to her. Cibell proposed that he delivers the two puppies at a local mall called Plaza Las Americas in order for her to then stop by and pick them up. However, Miguel told her that it would be easier for him if she just went to his house to pick them up. Cibel agreed to that and got ready to go to his house. She took this chance to try to get her dad's check back, whether he wanted to or not, because she believed that Miguel had been keeping it in his house the whole time. Cibel once again left the house without permission and took her father's gun with her in case Miguel would again deny giving her the check back. The gun was a 7.65 Walther PPK caliber handgun that her dad had stored for security reasons, due to him having a higher income than most in the area, making him more prone to be robbed or attacked. On Tuesday, December 13th, 1994, Cibel took a taxi to Miguel's house. She entered the house and ran into the guards of the home. She explained to them that she had arrived in order to make the purchase for a pet. The security guards let her in. Cibel was welcomed into the home by Miguel's mother, Mirtelina Muso. Mirtelina was very kind to her and even made her coffee. While Cibel was drinking her coffee, Mirtelina went to tell her son Miguel that he had a customer in the house. At the same time, there was another guest in the house who was Miguel's assistant for the pet selling business. He was 19-year-old Juan Gonzalez, who was in his freshman year of college studying pharmaceuticals at a university called Universidad de Santa Maria. Miguel recognized Cibel and was not happy to see her because she had bothered him so much about the check. However, Cibel explained to him that she was not coming over to argue about the check, but that her supposed aunt named Ariana had called him because she was interested in buying the two puppies. She also claimed that her aunt was waiting for her blocks away from the house because she thought security would not let her inside the house. Miguel then proposed that he and Cibel got on his car and went to where her supposed aunt was waiting. He asked his assistant Juan to come with them. The three got in Miguel's Toyota Land Cruiser car and started the ride. Miguel was driving, Juan was in the front passenger seat, and Cibel was in the middle back seat. During the ride, Cibel once again insisted that Miguel return the check to her, which he denied, to which was no surprise to her. Cibel then pulled out the gun she had been hiding and pointed it at Miguel's head, threatening him. Miguel tried to take the gun away from her. Cibel then started claiming that the threat was only a prank. However, Miguel kept wresting the gun away from her. Cibel then pulled the trigger and shot him in the head, killing him instantly. Both Cibel and Juan froze afterwards, and were in shock of what had just happened. They stared at each other. Juan panicked and begged Cibel to not kill him. He promised that he wouldn't tell anyone about what had just occurred. Cibel then told him, "Sorry, I'm not bad, but I can't let you live because you saw everything." She pulled the trigger once again and shot Juan in the head, as well killing him instantly. Cibel, who was really close to Miguel's house, ran out of the car and headed towards the house. Along the way, she started walking calmly and eventually fled the area by getting on another taxi. When she got back home, she put her father's gun back where it was, and without anybody in her family knowing that she had just been involved in a double homicide. The guards of Miguel's home searched for him, Juan, and Cibel, because they never returned. They eventually found Miguel's car and discovered his body along with Juan's. This was 1 hour after the murders. Their bodies were identified, and the cause of death for both was ruled a homicide by gunshot. Authorities investigated the crime and first believed that the murder was done due to organized crime or a robbery attempt. Detectives interviewed Miguel's mother and questioned her about who she was hanging out with before they left the house. She told them that she was hanging out with Juan, who was also killed, and Cibel, who vanished and never returned to the house. She also described Cibel's features and how she claimed that she had an aunt named Adriana. The security guards were interviewed as well. They claimed that Cibel had walked in by herself, left the house with Miguel and Juan, then never returned or informed them about the murders. Detectives searched Miguel's car and found the used bullets that had been left behind. There were also fingerprints in the car that seemed to be of a third person who was not Miguel or Juan. Private funerals were held in the area for Miguel and Juan. Meanwhile, Cibel continued on with her everyday life. In January 1995, her father Shauki called his bank, known as Banco Union, and questioned their customer service about his missing check. The bank staff explained to him that the check had been filed with his signature and a payment had been made with it. He then informed them that the person filing the check was not him and asked for the contact information of the person who had received the check. The bank staff gave him Miguel's full name. Cibel's father looked up Miguel's phone number in his phone book and found it. He called Miguel's phone number, but due to him being deceased, Miguel's father Antonio was the one who answered the call. Shauki asked Antonio to speak with his son Miguel. Antonio then apologized and said that he could not assist him because his son had passed away last December. Shauki offered his condolences to the family but continued on with the call, asking about the checks that Miguel would collect. Antonio explained to him that Miguel had a pet selling business. After the phone call ended, Cibel's father was furious at her because he had blamed her for taking the check and not being honest about it. However, her mother calmed her father down and told him to not make a huge deal about it because they were about to go on vacation to the United States. The family then traveled to Orlando, Florida to visit relatives. When the family returned to Venezuela after their trip, Cibel's father beat her for taking his check and faking his signature to buy the pet kitten. This led to Cibel's face being disfigured by bruises and leaving her with a swollen left black eye. Many of Miguel's customers were interviewed by detectives and discarded from the case. The detectives then investigated the bank account that Miguel used for his business to see whom he was financially associated with. They checked whom he had made business with. It then seemed that both Miguel and Cibel's father went to the same bank. When detectives interviewed the bank staff, it was brought to light how somebody named Cibell Naime had called regarding a check that he claimed he had not deposited. This raised suspicion because the check was filed to Miguel's account. The police started investigating Cibel's family and eventually tied them as suspects to the murders. Cibel, along with the rest of her family, were arrested at their home and taken to the Caracas police station. Witnesses claimed that Cibel had been the one at Miguel's house and that she was the last person seen with the two murdered victims. Her father's gun was confiscated and later matched the bullets that had been found in Miguel's car. Venezuela homicide detective Leonardo Diaz Paruta interrogated Cibel and questioned her about why she looked so injured. She explained to him that her father had beat her over a check that he was mad about. Paruta then asked her about the two murders she was being accused of. Cibel confessed to them and admitted that she was just trying to get her dad's check back to avoid any trouble with him. She was ordered to be detained in the station until she faced a magistrate judge to decide where she would go. After detectives confirmed the claims that Cibel was the alleged suspect of these two pet sellers, the whole family except for Cibel and her father were let go by police. Her father, Cibell Naime, was then accused of aggravated assault for beating his daughter and could not yet be freed. Paruta was sure that his officers did not beat Cibel and that it must have been her father, since he was the one who had been making upsetting phone calls about his stolen check. However, Shauki made a payment to the police as a fine and was freed from custody, leaving Cibel detained by herself. This is how he avoided prison time for beating his daughter. The following day, Cibel was taken to court for the first time and faced Caracas magistrate Antonio Ripoles. She faced two homicide charges and was ordered to remain in custody while awaiting trial. She was then booked into the INOF, which is short for Instituto Nacional de Orientación Femenina, which is a system that incarcerates women pending trial for violent crimes. She was assigned to their jail in Los Teques, a small city in the outskirts of Caracas, Venezuela. In the jail, she was treated for her bruises by Venezuelan doctor Carrasquero Ramos. She was also mentally evaluated. Psychiatrist Carlos Gutierrez Ferreira diagnosed her with borderline personality disorder, in Spanish known as trastorno límite. This mental condition causes unstable moods, behaviors, and relationships. Cibell Naime's family hired a Venezuelan defense attorney to represent her. He was known as Gonzalo Corro. Corro would go on to use Cibel's mental condition as a defense to let her go due to the crime being committed by her condition and not by her malice intentions. The family of Cibel's 19-year-old victim consulted with a prosecutor, Jose Luis Tamayo, who would take on the case for him. The victim, 30-year-old Miguel Tawil, was a lawyer, and so was his father Antonio. This led to Antonio working as the second prosecutor attorney to bring justice to his son and have Cibel be punished for the murders. Many attempts were made to release her, but they never succeeded. Cibell Naime pleaded not guilty to the murders. In 1996, she was found guilty after a bench trial by Judge Cristobal Colmenares. Immediately after announcing the verdict, Colmenares sentenced Cibell Naime to 30 years in prison for both murders. Cibel remained incarcerated in the same facility for weeks. However, she showed foul behavior and was transported to a prison minutes away, known as Internado Judicial de los Teques. She was then officially placed in her prison in a smaller city called San Juan de los Moros. the prison known as Penitenciaría General de Venezuela. In 2005, she faced the National Parole Board. Prosecutor Edwin Frey would make sure that she would remain in prison. Frey claimed that Cibell was a danger to society and may have future disciplinary issues if released. However, Cibel's attorney Gonzalo Corro claimed that she had matured and had even obtained her high school degree from prison in 2001. Venezuelan appellate judge Michael Moreno successfully granted Cibell Naime parole. However, she would have to serve probation in order to be freed after serving nearly 12 years behind bars. Cibel was released from prison and moved to Oriente, one of the country's states. Due to economical issues in Venezuela, Cibel moved to Colombia to continue serving her probation. In 2022, she completed her probation and was completely free. She has since moved to Lebanon, where her family lives and is from. Her father Shauki passed away years after the family moved to Lebanon and months before Cibel arrived. Thank you so much for listening, and please make sure to like this episode. I would really appreciate if you followed this podcast if you haven't already, and shared it to people whom you think may be interested in true crime. Till next time, goodbye.